Please welcome President and Chief Executive Officer of Maritz Holdings, David Peckinpaugh, joining the stage with Skift Meetings Editor-in-Chief, Miguel Neves.
Well, hello again.
How do you sit in one of these?
Yes, it takes a bit of practice.
Oh, geez. I feel like I'm going to go flying out of here.
Welcome.
Thank you very
David.
much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here with us. You are the first ever guest of a Skift meeting.
Oh, I know.
How
How
does
terrifying
that
is that?
feel? Responsibility on your shoulders.
I know, but you start with a low bar, and then it just rises.
Absolutely.
And we did not coordinate outfits, by the way.
No. We just noticed.
Complete accident.
We got this. So you don't need any introduction, but I want to do a very, very short one anyway. You've been CEO of Maritz since January 22.
Correct.
You're the first ever non-family CEO of Maritz, which is, by some measures, going to be the largest agency in the world.
Right.
That is correct.
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure,
Yeah.
little responsibility. So we spoke on a podcast recently, on our Skift Meetings podcast, and we talked a little bit about the challenges that you're facing at Maritz and the opportunities, of course. You talked a little bit about this idea of integrating people and technology as being sort of the thing that's keeping you up at night. Is that still what's keeping you up, or could you give us a little bit of an update on how that's...
Yeah, I don't think it's probably a huge surprise that technology is a major component of our company, of our industry, and then the introduction of AI obviously has been part of the industry for quite a while, but now ChatGPT, generative AI, I mean, that seems like that is dominating every and all conversations. And that's the way it is with us internally. Our August board meeting, half of our board meeting was dedicated to generative AI and what that's going to mean to our organization, what it's going to mean to our clients, and what's it going to mean to our people. I think we're still very early on in this journey, but I think there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of anxiety. I think there are a lot of people who think this is going to put me out of work. I think we've probably all heard the quote that generative AI is not going to put you out of work, but if you don't embrace it, it very well could. And that's kind of the approach we're taking. Is we know we have to embrace it. We know it's going to be part of the equation with our internal processes and our clients, and it's going to affect our people, but in a positive way. But we're taking a very balanced approach, knowing that there's also a lot of risk in this environment. Our legal team is front and center, right? They're very active in this. Our owner, Steve Maritz, who handed the keys to the car to me about 1.5 years ago, is very big on what this could mean to the organization. And so we're under some board and ownership pressure to push that forward. But absolutely, it's one of the key issues that I think we are facing. I think everyone probably in this room is facing.
Yeah. So you're bringing 4 companies together.
So Maritz has been structured, and if anyone knows the company, 129 years, soon to be 130-year-old company. So it's been through literally every iteration of probably business model that you can think of. When I joined in 2011, actually my second day, I got a call from the then president and said, I probably need to share some news. We're separating all the companies into separate business units with their own board of directors. And
Important news to share.
It would have been nice to know during the interview process, but it actually was a really good thing at that time. And we had a large dependency in the organization on one account, and that's never good. It was an auto account, and so that really helped us diversify, really focus on the strength of each of those business units. So we were in a holding company model. With a holding company, we had 4 business units. We've since sold off one of those, our research company, March 8th of 2020. If you go back in time.
Interesting timing.
It was perfect timing. And so that made a huge difference. It was a big part of the company, but also the right time to diversify from that. Then when I took over in January of 22, started an initiative called Next 125. I was playing off the most recent 125th anniversary. And it was really how are we going to optimize the go-to-market strategy for the organization. And so we spent 3 months doing research and interviews and focus groups of everybody and every type that you can think of, employees, past employees, clients, past clients, industry influencers, industry organization leaders, a list going on and on. Then we had a steering committee that met for 6 months that got us to the direction that we're now heading, which is getting rid of the business unit model, no longer a holdings company, one brand, and going to market singularly as Maritz. And probably not we haven't done press releases on this or anything because probably for most of you in the room, it's no big deal, right? That's probably how you've talked about us forever. And that's really what we found out in the interviews is we were pushing an internal model of a holdings company model on the marketplace instead of listening to how the marketplace saw us, viewed us, and was buying from us. So it's a pretty simple thing. I asked Steve Maritz when the last time the company was ever branded just Maritz, and he said never. So in 129, soon to 130 years, this is the first time we're going to market just as Maritz. So we've consolidated the leadership team. We're in the process of doing all the necessary brand work. And so you'll see that more and more in the marketplace over the next probably 6 months. Yeah. We're targeting to have all that done by the end of our fiscal 24, which is the end of March.
Okay, so you didn't just flick a switch and everything was done?
It's a process. Deborah here is on our communications team. Their hands are full for the next 6 to 9 months for sure.
Okay, so sounds great, and I think as a company, I think easily recognizable, so I think that's good. But what advantages does this give you as a company? Because you must be doing this because you see advantages in being a larger, unified company.
Well, I think trying to listen to the marketplace seems pretty obvious, but sometimes when it comes to company structure, that doesn't necessarily happen. So I think first and foremost, it's about simplicity of our brand. If anyone really followed all of our social media and our branding, it was very confusing. It was confusing to me, and I've been with the company for 12 years. Imagine being a customer, a consumer, or a potential buyer trying to figure out the difference between, at that point, Maritz Global Events and Maritz Research and Maritz Motivation and Maritz Automotive. It just was confusing. So simplicity is a big thing. Clarity of the message, clarity of brand is going to be a big thing for us. And then just simplification internally, right? Processes and procedures, breaking down silos. And this is not going to happen overnight. It's a process. But because of that business unit model, we had a lot of silos. And we have so many great assets within the walls of the company that to unleash that potential to break down those silos, get better team collaboration, teamwork, and sort of cross-pollination we're already seeing the advantages of that. So, and at the end of the day, hopefully we're easier to do business with, and that's the ultimate goal with our customers.
Okay. So I know that one of the things we talk about a lot is talent.
Yeah.
We have, it's difficult to get great talent into the industry. The industry is sometimes seen as boring by the younger generation.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I was at PCMA last week at the European
Is this a boring
conference.
industry? I don't think this is a boring industry.
No, not my words, but it has come up a few times.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get your view on what you're doing at Maritz and maybe what we can do as an industry to attract people to the industry. Because if we don't have young people interested in working in events, then it's going to be tough to fill the jobs,
It's
right?
going to be really
I'm sure you need a few of those at Maritz.
Yeah, we went through, obviously, I don't want to relive what we've gone through, but obviously very difficult. We lost 87% of our revenue in the event side of the business. I don't think that's a huge surprise to anybody. We had to furlough or lay off well over 1,200 members of our work family, and that was really tough. And then the rebuilding is obviously you went from 100 to 0, and then now 0 to 100. So it's this whiplash effect. And so we've actually probably 60 to 65% of our team are now new to the company in the last 18 months. And with a company that had the kind of legacy and longevity of staff that we enjoyed for so many years, that's a huge burden on an organization. How do you onboard people? How do you build culture? How do you retain those individuals? We had a lot of churn during that great resignation period, and that has really calmed down quite a bit. But I think if you look at the talent equation, it also opened up a lot of opportunities. So we have a big DE&I initiative. So we looked at how do we now recruit differently, and we're no longer. I was having a meeting with Howard with PCMA earlier today, and I said we went back and looked at a heat map of where our people were located 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and now. 20 years ago, we were very centric to where our offices were: St. Louis, Detroit, Southern California. Then we acquired Experience in 2012. That would have expanded that footprint. And now in 2023, we're all over the map. It is from the Northwest to the Southeast. We're very decentralized. And because of that, we've been able to recruit differently. We've been able to hit some of our DE&I initiatives and goals, and also bring in talent that otherwise we would have missed on because they weren't in St. Louis or they weren't in Detroit, weren't in DC, and so that's helped. But it is still not a picture perfect scenario by any means. Still a lot of stress on that onboarding process, on culture, which I know we'll get into. It was great to hear Rafa talk about that, because these kind of gatherings are really critical to organizations. I think around culture, around talent and retention, but it's an ongoing battle. And if anyone says they've got to figure it out, I'd love to talk to them, because I don't think that's the case. I think we're all trying to learn and trying to figure this out. Yeah. But managing people remotely is different. The whole environment has changed significantly, but it's also a big opportunity. So I think you either look at it as a negative or a positive. We look at it as a positive and a way for us to further expand our business.
Do you think because people are remote and sometimes work on the road, blended, all that kind of thing, do you think that makes the industry less attractive, in the sense that before maybe people were thinking, hey, I get to travel if I'm in the meetings industry, and now it's like, well, I can work from anywhere. It doesn't sound so attractive.
It's really interesting, because I've never seen this as a boring industry. I've been in it my whole career, which has been lengthy. I'm old. And I have two children. I have a 26 and a 24-year-old, and both, ironically, are now in the business, which was never planned. I think if you talk to either one of them, they probably said, I don't want anything to do with what my dad does. But now they're in the industry and they love it. But they were initially reticent. Mm-hmm. I think the flexibility of the industry, I think, is a big attraction. Because that's one of the things. Now, both of my kids, ironically, are in the office all the time. But they said if they had to apply for a job that required them to be in the office all the time, they probably wouldn't apply. And I think so that overall mindset of flexibility, I think, is really important for this industry. But I think this is an amazing industry, and I think we've got to do a better job of telling this story. Talking to people like Paul with MPI and Sheriff with PCMA, and all the other industry organizations, there's a great opportunity for us to tell better stories, and to highlight not old fogies like me, but to try to highlight people that are new to the industry, maybe 3 to 5 years in their career, and tell that story about what attracted them. I started as a front desk clerk at a little lodge in Vail, Colorado. And everyone says, oh, this is a low-paying, low-entry, you can't build a career industry. And I think that's a bunch of BS. I don't think that's the case at all. I think it has great opportunity, great career advancement. My son is starting at the Ritz-Carlton in Chicago. He's in sales and marketing as a coordinator, and he's going to have to earn and build his way, but he can see the future, and I think that's our responsibility, is to build that future for the people that are entering the industry. I think it all comes down to storytelling. We have to do a better job of it. We have to sing it loudly, proudly, and really attract the talent to this industry that we deserve.
Absolutely. What about hybrid workforces? We've talked a little bit about maybe that making it less attractive, but I know that you're also planning for a lot of companies that are remote and hybrid. Right. How does that make your job more difficult?
Well, I think it adds complexity, but again, we look at it as an advantage, not a negative. So I'll talk about us and then maybe the clients that we work with. Internally, absolutely, it's a challenge. I already talked about onboarding and culture and all those things, career advancement, career development, but just basic communications. I think we see a lot of challenges with our managers that can effectively manage a remote workforce versus when they can see everyone day to day, eye to eye. Screen to screen is a very different environment. Still maybe eye to eye, but you just don't get that same relational impact. So I think internally, we're trying to deal with it through a lot of communications. Deborah is one of our communication leaders, and so external communications, but a lot of internal town halls. I do a monthly video, things that hopefully keep people connected to the organization, because I'm very concerned about people that are people that are out remote, isolated. I think mental health becomes a big issue in that environment. I tell the story of my daughter's boyfriend works for a high-tech company, was with the company for 3 years, hired, advancing through his career, had never met anybody in the company face-to-face until they had an event a year ago in November in Vegas. And he called my daughter and said, no one knows what to do. We're all just standing in a room looking at each other because they're all used to coding. They had no idea how to have a conversation. They had no idea how to break the ice. And so she was like giving them, here are 5 questions you can ask. And ask them, what's their favorite sports team? Or, of course, it's a gaming, team. But it was really I think demonstrates the challenge that we have in this environment.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's a journey that we're all on. But for us, we're really trying to hit it on communication as the core strategy.
Yeah, when I joined Skift meetings, I didn't meet anybody for a year. So when I
Really?
first joined, it was like, oh, you're real.
Yeah, you're real.
You're a real person. You're
Yeah.
not just a window on Zoom.
It's
But
it's confusing to me. But then in working with our clients, we have a workplace experience practice. We have a very big high-tech client that we manage all their campus events around North America, and they don't have a mandate. They want the workplace to be a magnet, not based on a mandate to be in the office. So part of why they hired us is our design practice, our ability to create experiences around whether it's a 10-person gathering or 150 people in a sales meeting, but to make that a reason why people want to come back on campus, why they want to be meeting in person. And I think that carries over to how do we design events, how do we engage people while they're at an event, and I think that is the same for the workplace. So it puts more pressure, I think, on the organization to say, if we are expecting people to be together, then we have to make that investment of time worth it. And we have a saying internally that the currency of experience is time. And so you've got to make everyone's investment of time, whether it's coming into the office or coming to a meeting, worth it. And so everyone has that ROI in their head, whether they know it or not. Is it worth me getting on a plane, staying in a hotel, going through that to attend a meeting? Is it worth it? And we've got to, as organizers, say there's a responsibility for us to do things in person that absolutely cannot be done remotely. Absolutely. And so it's a big design challenge. And again, I think we're all figuring that out, but hopefully we're at the cutting edge of that because we're very proud of our design practice.
if it can be done on Zoom, it doesn't belong in the room.
It shouldn't be in a room, right?
That's the line. These are return to office events. Is that a fair name for them? Is that a big part of, or is that a growing part of your business?
I think return to office is gone now.
Okay.
I think it's why do I need to be in the office?
So it's an attraction.
It's an
to the
attraction to.
audience.
I think we had better together signs all over our campus for probably the first 18 months. I still saw one the other day. Probably time to get those down because we don't have a mandate. We try to do a lot of things to get people to come in, but people naturally want to come in, and so we see Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday parking lots are packed. Monday and Friday probably not as much, but I think that's just the reality of today's workplace.
Absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about challenges right now. We cover this a lot on Skift meetings. We have short lead times. We have rising costs, a cliff effect on multiple different rising costs, service levels, labor, complex contracts. Anything you want to pick on?
Well,
It's like,
sounds
what's
like a
keeping
fun
you
industry,
late?
doesn't
I
it?
know.
Yeah.
What is your worst nightmare right now? If you don't mind sharing.
Well, all of those above, because I don't think I can add a lot to that part of the discussion because we're all living it. I think the compressed timeline is a huge issue. We just had a 2,500 person room on peak event booked 6 weeks out. And we found space. And that's not unusual. The expectation, and we do a lot in the corporate marketplace, we also do a lot in the association and trade show space. The overall timelines, I think our stat was 240 days for a major corporate event and 750 days, 749 days for an association event. And if you look back probably 5 years ago, that looked very different. So the challenge that creates is we're still staffed. We still have a lot of staff shortages in the industry. I think I saw the other day a fact, 223,000 employees still down, I think, in the industry overall. And so how is that being dealt with? Automation. And so you're going, you no longer maybe have a front desk clerk, you go to your digital key. And so the industry is still dealing with that overall shortage, and that timeline then adds to that equation. So I think it's how do we plan meetings differently? How do we be more transparent on our communications, on costs, and then service levels? I think one of the big drivers right now is service levels. We've seen a huge uptick in RFPs around luxury and luxury properties. And I think that's because luxury recovered first, they recovered their staff first, and their service levels are back to, if not pre-COVID levels, to even better. And I think, so clients that are making that investment of time in their event are looking at luxury because the service levels are what they expect. Other areas of the industry, I think, are suffering. And I think the experience is there, and so some of the upper scale to economy properties are struggling as it comes to meeting business.
Okay, good to hear. I think I'm going to have time for 1 or 2 questions. So if you have a question, raise your hand, and one of my colleagues, Colette, will come around with a microphone. But I wanted to ask you to kind of wrap this up.
Okay.
When do you say no to a client? Because I know clients come to you with budgets that don't work, timelines that are impossible. How do you deal with that?
It's interesting because we're a culture that's based on yes, which is a great thing, but it also, I see Deborah nodding, because it's also a problem, right? Is we constantly say yes to our clients, and what does that do? That causes a lot of scope creep, added expense. Are we good at then going back to the client and getting paid for that additional expense? Not always, and so I think that's a significant issue when I look at that overall environment.
Okay. You never say no.
I think that we say no if a client has a request that is unethical. We say no if a client is asking our staff to do something that is just not right, or our client is doing something that is, I would call it abusive behavior, and we do see that. I would say in the last, I'll just say post-COVID, we have probably walked away from less than a handful of accounts. And most of those issues were not ethical issues, but they were about behavioral issues and how our staff is being treated.
It's good to hear. I think that's a good message.
At the end of the day, if your culture is based on people and our core value is first take good care of our people, and we have a 4-stakeholder model in that, but if we're living to that and our people are being treated unfairly by a client, then we have to step to the plate.
And you do a lot of work on well-being and wellness as well. That's also internal,
We do.
But also for
I don't know if anyone knows Rachel Riggs in the industry. Rachel's our well-being leader as well as our environmental strategy leader, and does a fantastic job. Well-being, mental health, front and center, I think, for every organization right now. We've already talked about the impact that hybrid has on that. But I think overall there's a focus on trying to get some balance in our lives because it's a really difficult thing to achieve.
Yeah, that's great that you're doing that kind of work. I want to talk a little bit about partnerships. I know you partner across the industry with hotels, venues, all sorts of things, but I know airlines you find particularly difficult because some airlines are very interested in collaborating and being a partner in the industry, and others choose not to.
Yeah, I think when we were talking earlier, the one aspect of the industry I think gets overlooked a lot is the airlines part of it, because we can't have our meetings without getting to a destination. The interesting thing I think with the airlines is they, up until recently, had never saw themselves as part of the hospitality industry or the meetings industry, right? They were intermodal, they were transportation. We were just a segment of their industry. I think that's changed. If you look at U.S. Travel and a lot of representation at this meeting with U.S. Travel, we now have a number of the airlines that are members of U.S. Travel Association. That's a great advancement. What we've seen, we still have an internal guest services team, well over 100 people that book tickets for our clients. And it's a huge issue, right? We've all either went through the Southwest meltdown over the holidays, United's meltdown in June. We have issues with TSA, we have issues with pilot shortage, we have issues with air traffic controllers, schedule changes. Give you an idea, we have an emergency line. We'll usually get 200 to 250 calls in a quarter to that emergency line. We were over 7,500 calls to our emergency line in a quarter. And that's with schedule changes, weather delays, flight interruptions, airline meltdowns, the list goes on and on and on. So it's been interesting to see who has really stepped to the plate, and there's some airlines that have really progressively continued their commitment to our segment. And then there's a couple legacy carriers that have basically walked away from it. I won't mention them from the stage, but if anyone wants to know, I'm happy to talk a sideline. But it's been really fascinating to see that shift. I think a lot of it is because of the pressure on the bottom line, and they see the leisure traveler as the highest airfare, the most immediate solution to their issue. Long term, I think they're going to regret their decision because we provide a great foundation and long-term bookings for the airlines, just like we do for the hotel industry. So I think they're short-sighted.
So there you have it. We can speak to David offline and find out which airlines we need to apply some pressure and get working on it.
Yeah.
So David, thank you very much for joining us.
Appreciate it.
We're up to time, so
All right.
really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.